Okay.
We have to, we're now. They're on. We're live now. We're on. We're live.
We're on.
Okay, sure. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone, to Westworth United Church. Welcome to this series we're having on Inner Peace, Earth Peace, learning about Buddhist and Christian spiritual practices. My name is Loraine MacKenzie Shepherd. I'm the minister here at Westworth United Church, and I'm very pleased to be working in a team with Sensei Frederick Ulrich and Sensei Tanis Moore. It's been lovely. I love getting together with these two to plan a number of things. So they are both wearing, and they maybe can tell you about it, some Buddhist stoles. And it reminded me of a stole, an interfaith stole that Linda Trono, some of you know her, gave me. I have yet to wear it. This is my first time wearing it tonight. So it's sort of in celebration of our interfaith relationships. As you look at our star blanket hanging over there on the wall, it reminds us of our responsibilities as treaty people. We worship, work, play on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional lands of the Cree, Oji-Cree, Anishinaabe, and Dakota peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We also receive water from Shoal Lake on Treaty 3 land. And we receive hydro from all 5 treaty lands in Manitoba. We're all treaty people who are invited to take the responsibilities of being treaty people as seriously as we take the privileges. Thich Nhat Hanh was a Vietnamese Zen master and Buddhist monk. Thomas Merton was an American Trappist monk who lived in a contemplative community. They both defy the stereotypes of Christians and Buddhists. And the stereotypes go like this. Christians are very good at service and doing. We talk here at Westworth about really living into that Protestant work ethic. Buddhists, the stereotype continues, are very good at meditation and being. Well, both Thich Nhat Hanh and Thomas Merton defy those stereotypes because they were both contemplative peacemakers during the Vietnam War. As described in Thich Nhat Hanh's book, this is one of the, I think this is the 20th anniversary edition, it's been around a long time, Living Buddha, Living Christ, and it refers to his conversation with Thomas Merton throughout the book. They learned from each other. They deepen their own spiritual practices in listening to one another. Their spiritual practices from their own traditions. And that helped to sustain their social activism work. And that's our prayer for you tonight and for the next 3 nights, for this 4-week session. It's a chance to just barely dip our toes into the rich tradition of Buddhism and Christian contemplative practices. So it's just a little teaser you're going to get in the next 4 weeks. But we hope that some of the teachings you'll hear, some of the practices that we will do together might resonate with you, and you might be able to, even if you could identify one practice that you think might be helpful to take home with you. Our prayers that it might help sustain your social activism work and your daily lives at home. So when the article appeared last Saturday in the Free Press about this event, I was stunned, we were stunned, to hear the response. My email was going crazy all day Saturday. We have over 60 people registered. We had planned for the Manitoba Buddhist Temple, which both of these folks are representing and from, and Westworth United Church, to have a joint study between our two congregations. And we thought max 15 people. Mm-hmm. And it was going to be in a little room, intimate. Well, we had to pivot on the spot and redo a little bit of our plans because of the interest tonight. It indicates that there is a deep need out there, in here, for inner peace and for something that can sustain our work as we try to make this world a little kinder and a little gentler. So just a few more housekeeping things. Some of you have asked about donations. There is a donation basket at the back. It is free, but if you do want to contribute to the cost, it's mainly honoraria that you're welcome to do that. Anything $20 or over will receive a tax receipt. And there's various ways to do that, so you can talk to me after if you're interested in finding out about how to do that. Tonight, our theme is interdependence, or as Thich Nhat Hanh has called it, interbeing, a term he coined. And then at the conclusion of this evening, Eric Napier, is that how you say his name? Napier Strong, is he here? Yeah, there, great, excellent. He will be playing the shakuhachi. I'm trying to learn that new word. That's the name for a Japanese flute. So at the very conclusion of tonight, we'll have about 10 minutes or 15 of meditation with just the flute playing. So it will take us out of here in a good way. We are also recording these sessions so that they will be available on our YouTube channel, on our website. So if there's anyone you know who wasn't able to come but would like to see it, then you can tell them about, just look at the Westworth United Church's website and the YouTube recordings will be there. There are also some handouts at the back. I think most of you got them when you came in. And Fred will talk more about them later. And so now, Fred, I invite you to lead us in an opening meditation.
The opening meditation is adapted from Soto Zen, but it also has other uses in Buddhist meetings, and most of our Sunday services start with 2 to 3 minutes of meditation, and there's another couple minutes throughout the service when people can sit quietly and meditate. So it represents three, we do have sectarianism in Buddhism, and this is Rinzai Zen, Soto Zen, and Obakufu Zen. And in Obakufu Zen, it combines my form of Buddhism, which is Pure Land Buddhism, with Zen. And Soto Zen is just quiet sitting. But there's one attitude of mind that's required, and that is just sitting there, being nobody, doing nothing, going nowhere. And you adapt that form of mind. It's one of the hardest meditations in the Buddhist cycle of meditations. So we will practice that tonight for 3 minutes, and I will ring the gong at the end of every minute so you know it's not going to last 5. You'd be surprised how many people can't sit quiet for 5 minutes. Right? It's amazing, because it seems when you're having a service, it seems like forever, 5 minutes, like waiting for an elevator or something. So we'll stay with 3 minutes, just sitting here, doing nothing, being nobody, going nowhere, relaxed in mind and body. So breathe easy and relax and look around with friendly eyes.
Thank you, Fred. The crest of the United Church of Canada has, the newly revised crest has Mohawk words written on the bottom that mean all my relations. And that is a teaching from the elders that we are all related to one another, human beings across the planet, across races, cultures, languages. Even more, we are all related to creation in general, the rocks, the trees, the lake, the two-leggeds, the four-leggeds, the winged and the finned creatures are all relations of ours. And that teaches us a little bit about interdependence. It teaches us that human beings are no more important than any other kind of beings. Now, the Christianity traditionally has not taught that. It has taught the superiority of humans with the command to have dominion over all creation. But there is an alternative orthodoxy, is what some people refer to it as, perhaps most well known through the teachings of St. Francis of Assisi. Who has heard of St. Francis of Assisi? So, "Make me an instrument of your peace" is a song we sing that comes from some of his writing, some of his words. He refused this hierarchy of beings. And instead of seeing humans as different, as separated from everything else, he taught what's called the unitive way of seeing and knowing. When you look at things differently, look at the whole earth as part of who I am, it changes how you treat the earth. And when you begin to contemplate on that, you might find those ego boundaries becoming porous. And it allows us to set aside our sense of superiority and find ourselves at one with creation, with the Creator, with all of creation. Francis developed a kinship with the creatures and with nature in particular, calling them his sisters and his brothers. And there is a story about a fierce wolf at the time when St. Francis lived. It was devouring the livestock around a little village called Gubbio. And then it turned its attention from livestock to humans. It was becoming a very dangerous animal, and the villagers were frightened. They tried to kill it through all sorts of ways, and it continued to elude them. Well, St. Francis heard about this, and he approached the village and said, let me have a meeting with this wolf and just see what we can do. So he found the wolf's lair, approached the wolf. It saw him, began to snap and snarl. But St. Francis came in peace. He came with a very different intent. He didn't come to kill, and the wolf sensed this fairly quickly. Then allowed him, St. Francis, to look at what was going on underneath the snarls and the snaps and realize this wolf was very hungry. It was simply trying to live. So he made an agreement with the wolf and said, okay, if the villagers of this little town feed you every day, will you stop eating their livestock and them? Well, the story ends with the wolf putting his paw in the hand of St. Francis. St. Francis knew that all of creation is interdependent. It's one with the Creator. And, more particularly, the health of even that which is most feared, or the one who is most feared, can be a way to peace. How? The story offers us a teaching. And the teaching is that if we can focus on the needs of those who threaten us, rather than on their elimination, we might find a way to permanent reconciliation. So this belief was translated into Francis's social activism. He lived during the horrors of the Crusades. And during the Fifth Crusade in particular, he traveled from Italy to the Holy Lands, determined to do all he could to end the battle. He made an appointment with the Sultan who saw him, which was a miracle in itself. They became friends, and the result of that friendship was that they invited him to sacred places in the Holy Land. And eventually, the Franciscan order was the order that was invited to come and be one of the keepers of one of the places in the Holy Land, because of this history that St. Francis had with the Muslims. So he developed what people today are calling the third way, a third way that refuses to be divided by friend or foe. How can we hate or kill someone if we understand that someone to be our brother or our sister? He took literally Jesus' command to love our enemies, and he patterned his contemplative prayer on Jesus' frequent forays into the hills to pray alone. One of the reasons St. Francis was able to bring so much peace to places of conflict is that he accepted the shadows of himself, the weaknesses of himself, as well as the weaknesses and shadows of others, not just their strengths, the way in which they shone the light. Father Richard Rohr calls this the integration of the negative. Instead of being dismayed at getting angry or getting frustrated one more time, because we all do it, unless you're a particularly special person. And when we get frustrated at ourselves doing that, we close down in self-castigation. Well, St. Francis suggests that instead of doing that, we humbly open ourselves to those shadows, to those mistakes, to those ways in which we are betraying love, and then move into forgiveness for ourselves, remaining open the whole time to God's grace. So these words Francis wrote about that process. We must bear patiently not being good and not being thought good. I'll just read that once more. We must bear patiently not being good and not being thought good. Now, when translators had read this way back, they originally thought there was a mistake. And so edits and translations for centuries omitted the word not, until someone discovered that, in fact, the original manuscripts did contain that word. And so St. Francis teaches us that if we cannot accept our shadows, our ego climbs on that superiority ledge. But if we can accept our shadows, we will be better able to accept the shadows of others. Francis taught us that humility will take us into a place of peace with ourselves, and that will help take us into a place of peace with others. And then we realize that we are indeed all related, brothers and sisters across artificial divides, interdependent on each other for the health and welfare of all creation. So that's a little introduction to our topic tonight of interdependence from a Christian perspective. And I invite Tanis. I think you're next, right? Are you next? Is that what we... I don't have my agenda here.
That's what it says.
That's what it says, okay. To take us from that understanding of definition into the Buddhist understanding of interdependence.
Okay. well, I hope that's what I'll do. I was just showing both of them, Sensei Fred and Loraine, this bracelet that someone had made for me, and it says bamboo on it. And it kind of relates to what you were saying about, how we are all not perfect, and we all make mistakes, and that's what bamboo means. We are all foolish beings, and we are not perfect. And anyway, I just wanted to share that lovely bracelet story. So I wrote about Indra's net, which actually originally comes from Hindu teaching, but it's also very important in certain forms of Buddhism. Now all I have to do is find my paper here. Okay. So the people who follow Huayan Buddhism focus a lot on the jewel net of Indra. So here's a quote from Francis H. Cook on the jewel net of Indra. Far away in the heavenly abode of the great god Indra, there is a wonderful net which has been hung by some cunning artificer in such a manner that it stretches out indefinitely in all directions. So it's vast as can possibly be imagined. In accordance with the extravagant tastes of deities, the artificer has hung a single glittering jewel at the net's every node. And since the net itself is infinite in dimension, the jewels are infinite in number. There hang the jewels, glittering like stars of the first magnitude, a wonderful sight to behold. If we now arbitrarily select one of these jewels for inspection and look closely at it, we will discover that in its polished surface there are reflected all the other jewels in the net, infinite in number. Not only that, but each of the jewels reflected in this one jewel is also reflecting all the other jewels, so that the process of reflection is infinite. The Huayan school of Buddhism has been fond of this image, mentioned many times in its literature, because it symbolizes a cosmos in which there is an infinitely repeated interrelationship among all members of the cosmos. This relationship is said to be one of simultaneous mutual identity and mutual intercausality. We certainly use the word infinite a lot of times in that paragraph. Huayan Buddhism recognizes Indra's web in the Avatamsaka Flower Garden Sutra. This is translated as a great number, a multitude, or a collection. It was written about 500 years after the death of the historical Buddha. It describes a cosmos of infinite realm upon realms, mutually containing one another. It is more prominent in East Asian Buddhism. The Huayan school of Chinese Buddhism was founded on this work, characterized by a philosophy of interpenetration, all phenomena being empty of inherent existence and thus indefinitely penetrating. The earliest known reference to the jewel net of Indra is found in the Atharva Veda, one of the 4 Hindu Vedas. Indra is known as the king of the Devas. Francis Dogen Cook wrote, "Thus, each individual is at once the cause for the whole and is caused by the whole. And what is called existence is a vast body made up of an infinity of individuals, all sustaining each other and defining each other. The cosmos is, in short, a self-creating, self-maintaining, and self-defining organism. Thich Nhat Hanh created such terminology as interbeing and interdependence, which are often used in our teachings, one of which refers to the notion of emptiness in engendering compassion, as it does away with the distinction between self and other. One of his gathas, hymns, goes as follows: "The one who bows and the one who is bowed to are both by nature empty. There the communication between them is inexpressibly perfect. Our practice center is the net of Indra, reflecting all Buddhas everywhere, and my own person reflects in all Buddhas, to whom, with my whole life, I go for refuge." The Prajnaparamita, the sixth perfection, is the perfection of understanding. This is the highest kind of understanding, free from all knowledge, concepts, ideas, and views. Prajna is the substance of Buddhahood in us. In Mahayana Buddhism, Prajnaparamita is described as the mother of all Buddhas. Everything that is good, beautiful, and true is born from our mother, Prajnaparamita. She is in us. We only need to touch her to help her manifest herself. Right view, the first of the Noble Eightfold Path of our teachings, is Prajnaparamita. There is a lot of literature on Prajnaparamita, and the Heart Sutra is one of the shorter discourses in that collection. Prajnaparamita is the wisdom of non-discrimination. The insight refers to apprehension of the fundamental emptiness of all phenomena. And I quote, "Form is emptiness, emptiness is form." To quote from the heart of the Prajnaparamita Sutra, again, another quote, "Listen, Shariputra, form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. Form is not other than emptiness. Emptiness is not other than form. The same is true with feelings and perceptions and mental formations, and so with consciousness. All forms are marked with emptiness, neither produced nor destroyed, neither defiled nor immaculate, neither increasing nor decreasing. Therefore, in emptiness there is neither form, nor feelings, nor perceptions, nor mental formations, and no consciousness, no eye or ear or nose, or tongue or body or mind." This interpretation is saying that teachings, while accurate descriptions of conventional truth, are mere statements about reality. They are not reality itself, and that they are therefore not applicable to the ultimate truth that is, by definition, beyond mental understanding. Thus, the Bodhisattva, as the archetypical Mahayana Buddhist, relies on the perfection of wisdom defined in the Mahaprajnaparamita Sutra to be the wisdom that perceives reality directly without conception, thereby achieving nirvana. Perfection of wisdom is to reach unexcelled, complete enlightenment. The perfection of wisdom is the all-powerful mantra, the great enlightening mantra, the unexcelled mantra, the unequaled mantra, able to dispel all suffering. This is true and not false. The perfection of wisdom is then condensed in the mantra with which the sutra concludes, "Gate gate para samgate bodhisva," literally meaning Gone, gone, gone beyond, gone utterly beyond, enlightenment hail. A quote from Dong-ron, the Chinese master Tan Luan, is one of the 7 masters of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, says, "When one sees the illusory nature of all beings, there is born true compassion." So as the universal saying goes, we are all one. Thank you.
Thanks, Tanis. Fred, do you want to add any further thoughts about what interdependence or interbeing means in lay terms?
Yeah, is it?
We are,
I'll have a couple things to say.
yeah, before the poem, yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, okay. When I was starting my Buddhism many years ago, I was studying at the University of Alberta, and I was practiced Soto Zen, the meditation we just did. And they chant the Heart Sutra that she was alluding to. It's only 2 pages long, and you can chant it in Sanskrit or Chinese or Japanese or English, whatever you wish. And every year someone comes out and translates it again. It's somewhere in the world, every hour, the sutra is being chanted. That's how popular it is among Buddhism and some non-Buddhists as well. So you can do yourself a favor and look up the Heart Sutra and play with the ideas, but it's something to be sitting in a sitting position. I was able to do it when I was a young man, and recite over and over, the eyes are empty, the mouth is empty, the nose is empty, the ears are empty, the skin is empty, the body is empty, the future is empty, the past is empty, and it's a realization that all this emptiness is a foundation of compassion. And they go through bodily and psychological and emotional, and it's such a, when you chant it, after a while, you become the sutra. That's the purpose of chanting. So I hope that maybe sometime we can chant the Heart Sutra. It only takes about 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. And maybe one of the times we can work it in. And they use gongs and clackers and big drums. And there's a lot of noise if you do it in a group, you know. And it's actually, Buddhist chanting is actually an experience with self-transcendence. And in the West, they don't quite trust chanting. They don't get the point. The Avatam Sutra, the Sakya Sutra that she was mentioning is called the Flower Adornment Sutra. It's 900 pages long. And people used to memorize it. Modern people don't do things like that. Or 10 men would get together and memorize it, and they would take turns chanting it to each other, and when they're over, they'd start over again. And it's full of beautiful metaphors of Indra's net, how you can look in a jewel and see all other jewels. You can look at a person and see all other people. And if you stick with the book, you'll start having, having what the book is talking about. So, and the Heart Sutra is only 2 pages long, so you can choose one or the other. Okay.
Fred, before you go on to the meditation you're going to lead us in next, can you say just a bit more about emptiness? You both talked about emptiness, and what is that all about?
Well, actually, there's empty spaces between your molecules, and yet you're not falling through the chair. So there's both emptiness and fullness. Yeah. So I mean, if you look at science, you can see that there's room for a lot of emptiness in the world, and it's to a Buddhist it just seems, yeah, sure. But it goes back to the idea that I'm thinking all of a sudden the things I used to recite. Sarva samsaka dukkha, sarva samsaka anatma, sarva samsaka anitya. All things are impermanent. All things suffer, and all things have no self. So in Buddhism, there's not the teaching of an individual, eternal soul. We regard that as a deep psychological burden. So if you're all interrelated together, then you exist and you don't exist. Because you can't exist without all the plants and animals and people and stuff around you. You're interdependent with that. And yet you consider yourself an isolated being, an isolated complete being, like a billiard ball running into other billiard balls. And actually, it's the interdependence that allows us to have, to make peace with our own impermanence and to make peace with our own death. And that's the beginning of enlightenment, when you make peace with your own death and you make peace with your own impermanence. So it's like a wheel. It both exists and it doesn't exist. An old teaching is touch the wheel. So you go up and touch the spoke. No, touch the wheel. And you touch the center part of the wheel. No, touch the wheel. And you touch the rim. No, touch the wheel, you fool. And you can't touch every molecule in the wheel itself, so how do you know what a wheel is? Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is the kind of intellectual, but also deeply psychological experiences that Buddhist meditators have, and Buddhist people who read this and chant the sutras have, and try to leave a Buddhist life. So you just sit there, do nothing, be nobody, go nowhere. And that's the beginning of emptiness.
Thank you.
Well, I think we are all 99.9% space. So if that's not emptiness, I don't know what is. Yeah, that's what he was saying about falling through the chair, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Could be chant too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let's put all theories aside and turn to the handout. The smaller handout is just for your benefit to take home and ponder. There are so many people teaching mindfulness now, it's amazing. One person in one elder community is a Muslim, and he teaches mindfulness meditation. I think that's wonderful, So we'll recite this together. And I referenced Winnipeg here. I wrote this for Winnipeg Buddhist people. So see if you can catch the line that is a reference to Winnipeg. So what we do is I start out by announcing the title. And then I ring the bell, I announce the title, and on the next bell ring we start reading the first words and so forth, okay? And we'll read it slowly. After all, it's something that should be understood while you're reading it. And don't be bashful. No one else is going to hear you, and please do yourselves a favor and experience reading it. Okay, so I'm going to announce the heading. The Mindful Way, the Poetry of Interbeing. Song of my breath. Follow the breath in, breathing in. Follow the breath out, breathing out. Follow the breath shared by everyone around me here and now. We all share the same air. Breathe in, breathe out. Air in, air out. Taking in the air shared. Breathing out the air shared. The crows sitting in the tree outside. Breathing in, breathing out. Sharing air from crow lungs. The happy dog chasing a ball. Breathing in, breathing out. Sharing air from dog lungs. The bee gathering nectar. Breathing in, breathing out. Sharing air from bee lungs. The horse at the racetrack. Breathing in, breathing out. Sharing air from horse lungs. A mother carrying a crying child. Breathing in, breathing out. Sharing air from mother-child lungs. The old man dying. Breathing in, breathing out. One last time. Sharing air from dying man lungs. Children playing in the park. Breathing in, breathing out. Sharing air from laughing children lungs. The busker at the forks, smiling, strumming, singing. Breathing in, breathing out. Sharing air from busker lungs. Following the breath in, breathing in. Following the breath out, breathing out. We're the community of those who live by breathing, breath to breath, air to air, lung to lung. Thank you, Fred. We're supposed to wait till that finishes sounding, right? If you want.
There's a good exercise in patience. So I invite you to just move a little bit towards 3 or 4 people around you and just say a wee bit to each other about anything that stood out for you tonight. How might some of these thoughts on interdependence, interbeing, help you find inner peace and earth peace? So we've got about 10-15 minutes. I'll give you a 10-minute heads up, and then you have a few more minutes after that. So.
You want us to walk around or talk to people?
Yeah. So go ahead and find one another. Hello. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I'm just going to take this off. No. I think we want just to let them talk.
Okay.
For a bit, and then we can. Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to say that the heart, when I first started going to the Buddhist Temple, Sensei Fred was having a meditation group at night. Mm-hmm. That was when I still lived out of the city and I was coming enough to go to school. So I was able to go to his evening meditation group, and there was this whole one on the heart sutra. So I never forgot that. Gate Gate Parasampati, that whole thing, it just rang with me.
Okay.
It's one of the attractions, even though our temple doesn't really use it, but
Okay. Yeah.
it's just one of those things.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, we're talking. That's good.
Ignore them. They do not exist.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to call you back. As you conclude your conversations. There's a good buzz happening in the room. That's always encouraging. So we've also received some feedback that we're going to try to do better to speak directly into the mics, so I'll try to help with that. And we're going to try to, if we do use terms, to explain what they are, right? So we're going to try to be a little more attentive to that as well. Thank you for that feedback. That's good. So we have a few minutes for any questions, comments that you may want to make. So if you would like to, I invite you to come to the mic here. It's a little maybe too much this way for your comfort, but it needs to be this side of the speakers so we don't get feedback. I think you're on.
Yeah. Would you like to tell us anything about the commonality between the Christian desert fathers and the Buddhists who renounced the world and went to the forest?
Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting question. Did you all get that? No. Okay. So he's asked if we're getting just a titch of feedback there, Peter. Thanks. Yeah. If we can talk about the corollary between the Desert Fathers and Desert Mothers and the Buddhist renunciation, I think you said, right? Does anyone want to start?
Renunciation, yeah. Oh. Surprisingly enough...
Now move forward, you got to go to...
Yeah, there was a man who united India, Ashoka, and he sent people out to the world, and he made pillars for people to read. And there are people who believe that they reached India. And we have to remember there's a lot of... can you hear me now?
There we go, I think... Yeah, no, it's okay. I think he's just adjusted it. It's okay. He just adjusted it. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
And there are people now interested in following these groups. When Alexander the Great conquered parts of India, he married 27 or 127 women, and they were all Buddhists, so they had to bring their entourage of monks. So the ancient Greeks understood Buddhism, okay? And Buddhism was a legal religion in Greece and a legal religion in Rome. And all of that knowledge has sort of been forgotten. But people in following these renunciates, have discovered that maybe some Buddhist monks reached these parts quite early, and they just didn't find their way back to India. So it's an exciting thing, but people, what happened when they destroyed the library of Alexandria and all the libraries of Buddhism in India, this knowledge was forgotten. And for long years, the Silk Road broke down, and it was no longer uniting Europe and Asia. And that was sort of like the Dark Ages, and the Europeans knew nothing. Whereas during the days of the Silk Road, there was contact between the Europeans and the Buddhists. And for about 400 years, the Catholics celebrated Buddha's birthday. And the minute they found out it was a Buddha, they canceled it, I thought that was a great mistake. So my point is, there is a book about this, and it's called From Stone to Flesh. And it's a very nice book, and it traces this spread of Buddhism, and then through history, the neglect of any connection between the two, and finally, the West discovers Buddhism. So I do think that what you're talking about Two is a universal appearance of something in religion. All religions have their renunciants. All religions have the people who like to go to deserts and live, or there's one very famous Buddhist teacher, a female, who liked to go live in a cave and stay, and seal it off, and she got fed once a day. She, after 12 years, eventually came out. She's a very marvelous Buddhist teacher, female. This has been going on for centuries and centuries before Buddhism, or before there was even a Europe, And so this continually reemerges, these themes continually reemerge in our religions over and over again. One United Church minister who wrote a book discovered 29 dying and rising saviors throughout history. All right? So that means that we all belong to these universal themes that keep cropping up. No matter what religion we have or philosophy, there are these universal themes in human history that keep cropping up over and over again. Right? And there's always been atheists and agnostics and people who don't like religion, and people, it's always been people like that since the beginning. But the Vikings had those too. The Vikings had people who didn't like religion and were atheists, Viking atheists, So it's all of us, I would encourage the loss of particularism and encourage the idea that we all belong to the great spiritual themes of humanity. And we work together working out these themes. That's my answer.
Thank you. How is the sound? Is that okay? Yeah? No.
You can't hear me?
Yeah, okay. We really need you closer to the microphone. Just pull it right up to you.
Okay, that was that.
There we go. There we go.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. I should have checked that earlier. I might add a bit about asceticism is what you're talking about. So there's, at least in the Christian tradition, it's called that. And I think we have something to learn from that tradition today. We feel hungry or empty, and so we try to fill ourselves up more and more, and it just doesn't work, right? We might need to start emptying ourselves instead of trying to fill up more and more. So that refers to all sorts of things. It refers to food, it refers to living simply, it refers to the clutter in the house, it refers to our over-scheduled lives, it refers to our addiction to filling. And the Desert Fathers and Mothers knew that singular focus was aided by asceticism, and singular focus helped people go deeper within and connect better without, right, out to the outside. So that's from the Christian side of it. But I think, as Fred was saying, there is a pattern of various religions learning that sometimes emptying, there's a Greek word, kenosis, in Christian scriptures, emptying can actually allow us to be more fully. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Really good question. Sure, yeah, please, if you can come to the microphone.
What do you mean by singular focus?
Singular focus. So we tend to pride ourselves on being, what's the word, multitasking, thank you, multitasking. And some younger people claim that they can do that well, and they can focus very well on every part that they're multitasking. Research suggests otherwise. I think we may have lost, to some degree, our ability to have a singular focus because we have the pressure to be multi-focused all the time. So singular focus doesn't mean it's not one particular thing all the time, but it means looking at something without being seduced by other distractions, right? Without being drawn in by the siren somewhere else, the siren song, right? That's what I'm meaning by singular focus. Yeah. We have a bit of feedback problems. Yeah. Okay, there we go. We are, as you can see, having some problems with our sound system. Our amplifier. Yeah. Yes. Our amplifier died on Sunday. That might do the trick. Thank you. Oh, you're a radio guy. I'm really glad you're here. Okay, that should do it. Okay, Peter, let's try. We have a professional in our midst. Oh, and he's giving a thumbs up too. Okay, thank you. I don't know where we were because I did not have a singular focus there. All right. Is there another question from someone or a comment? Yes, please.
I can promise you this has nothing to do with radio.
Okay. All right. Oh, I think, is it off? Just see if it's on. It might be off.
There. Maybe.
If you speak, I will reflect back. You can maybe turn that off then.
Actually.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Yeah.
I have some background, both being affirmed in the Christian church and my dad within the Buddhist. I'm curious.
I wonder if I can hear. Just give me this.
I'm curious if you could collectively look to Carl Jung and the concept of the collective unconscious, where we all have these architects of what is sun, what is moon, what is good, what is bad, and then to juxtapose that with what society is doing to us when, just a moment or so ago, you were talking about us being desensitized and claiming that we can multitask. There is no such thing as multitasking. We are distracted by divergent intentions and demands, and how between the faiths can we better marshal ourselves to adhere to what the core, that no matter what faith or cap that you have on, can lead us to. Does that make sense?
I remember one of my the guys I followed was Mahatma Gandhi. He's that naked guy wandering around in the park there, and sometimes I put a cap on him, so it'd be warm in the winter. But he had something that hit me when I was a young man. He said, "There will never be peace in the world until there's peace among the religions." And he had a lot of experience with interfaith marriages and interfaith activities, and that saying that got me started in this kind of thing. This kind of thing where if you listen to each other, all of a sudden let it be, I'll say it this way. I've seen Muslim leaders that I regard as enlightened. I've seen Jewish people that I regard as enlightened people, Buddhist people, Christian people, and from all walks, Catholics and so forth. And after a while, I get the idea that I'm seeing the same person over and over again. Because I think in each religion, a person reaches a psychological and balance within themselves that brings them inner peace. And it's almost the same person. Do I making sense? It's the same person you're meeting over and over again. So each religion can bring these things to you. I just finished reading a woman that was a really good writer, and she talked about one of the bases of religion is existential security. And with COVID and the war and the elections and 1% having 9% of the money and the rest of us having only 1%, we all realize we're living somehow in a failed world. And it's scary. What are you going to eat? Where are you going to get your water if this world fails? And people are starting to panic, and that's why they go for fascism, and that's why they go for weird philosophies and weird things, because they get a sense of existential security. And I think a lot of people who are really wrapped up in their, live in their computer worlds are somehow finding a replacement for religion in the computer world, because it gives them a sense of existential security. So this is, I think, if we operate from the point of view of service, how are we serving humanity, then the religious answers become easier.
I'm not quite sure if we're responding to what you're thinking of. Okay. One thing that came to mind, maybe it's a tangent from what you were saying, but interestingly enough, Carl Jung's teachings, particularly around shadows and the shadow side, were influenced strongly by Hildegard of Bingen, centuries prior to that. And he refers to her, he talks about her teachings. She talked about virtues and vices being the same, reflecting each other, depending on what emphasis you use on which. And Carl Jung drew on her teachings. So Hildegard of Bingen lived in, Nancy, 1100s. Yeah, 1100s. In Germany. Nancy and I did a pilgrimage to Hildegard of Bingen a while ago, and it was fascinating. So it's interesting that depth psychology was, at least for Carl Jung, was shaped by some Christian mystics, and particularly Hildegard of Bingen, hundreds of years prior to that, recognizing that importance of recognizing one's shadow, right? Which brings us around to the beginning of what we were talking about. Yeah. So we are moving to the end of this evening. We want to now move us into a time of meditation, listening to the flute being played. Next week, as we invite our flautist to come forward, next week we will be, let me just get my notes on that. We'll be focusing on inner peace and loving kindness for ourselves with a meditation that Fred will lead on the brain. I will introduce a couple of Christian chants, one from the Taizé tradition. So we used to have Taizé services here until COVID shut us down, but we'll teach you a bit about what that means. And then the following week, we'll be focusing on outward peace, and guest musician Phoebe Mann will be with us that evening. We'll be considering loving kindness and talk more about the third way. And then the concluding week, we will focus on earth, peace, and non-dualism, where we will end the whole series going outside, and there's a large, beautiful large elm right outside our front door. We'll end with a blessing of that elm with a tradition you may have read about in the Free Press, where Frederick and Tanis ordained a tree outside the Manitoba Buddhist Temple. So they're wanting to do that here, with the tree out here. So we'll end the whole season with that, symbolizing our dedication to the care of the environment. So that's... Yes, and I'll be doing offering a blessing too, yes. Fred wants to make sure it's an interfaith blessing. So that's just a snapshot of where we're going to go in the next 3 weeks. So I really hope that you'll be able to stay with us, and we will give us feedback from tonight, things that were helpful, things that weren't, and we will listen to that and as we massage and prepare our way forward. Do you want to introduce, sir?
Hi, yeah.
Right up to your mouth.
Is it on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I was very pleased the first time that Eric came to the Manitoba Buddhist Temple and asked if he could play his flute at the end as his way of making an offering to the Buddha. And ever since then, I've really enjoyed listening to him play. I'm also taking shakuhachi lessons at the Japanese-Canadian Association of Manitoba, although I've discovered how very difficult it is to even make a sound come out of this instrument. I finally have one note that I could play. So I'll just read what Eric wrote here. He's a student of the shakuhachi, a bamboo flute from Japan. The flute was traditionally played by a group of Buddhist monks, both to collect alms and as a part of their religious practice. Playing the shakuhachi takes the place of more familiar Buddhist practices like sutra chanting, koan practice, or even sitting meditation, seiza. Many of the old songs represent spiritual concepts or scenes from nomadic life. The famous saying associated with the shakuhachi, I'm not sure about pronunciation. Yeah, I'll just read the English translation, which is enlightenment in one sound, literally one sound, become Buddha. So without further ado, Eric will...
Could I just borrow one of your tables so I can
Okay. Maybe I'll...
This will hop up here. I'm going to play two songs for you quickly. One short song and one longer song. So there might be a quick pause in between them. The first one is just sort of an introduction.
You should have
But,
a microphone.
yeah, sorry. My voice sometimes carries.
Yeah.
Can folks hear me okay? Oh no, we're off actually on this one. It's better? Okay. I do tours in my professional life, so hopefully my voice carries enough. I'm going to play a short song and a longer song for you. The longer song is called Shinya no Kyoku, which means midnight piece or deep night music. If you ever, maybe I'm too loud. If you ever go to a Zen Buddhist retreat for meditation, they will wake you up at about 3 in the morning with a bell much larger and much louder than that. And so the feeling of this song is sort of a winter night, a little bit like today, the sort of calm, the peace, the feeling of being alone in meditation or in prayer, sort of thinking in this space, and some of the thoughts that you're experiencing throughout that time. And then at the end, the bell will sort of wake you up and call you to sort of meditate with the group. So I brought my own, actually, little gong that I'll start with. Thank you very much for listening. If you didn't maybe feel it, we talk a lot about meditation. People talk about mindfulness, and we often think about meditation as sitting quietly, silently, right? Reaching this kind of state of peace. But like the senseis, all three of them here were sort of talking about, we have to look at the light and the dark side of ourselves, right? And as we're going through these sort of moments of self-reflection, there can be intensity, there can be calm, there can be quiet, there can be pain, there can be moments you're sort of reaching out. And so the song is sort of attempting to encapsulate all of that. But as you work through that process by sort of coming together when the gong rings, when the bell rings to call us, to kind of contemplate together, that's often the time when we can return to that quiet peacefulness, just like we started.
Great. Thank you for playing, for my colleagues here, for you coming tonight. Go well into this gentle night.
Now I have to drive somewhere. We should have